Revolutionary greetings to all and sundry, my people of the southern Cameroons, dear people of Ambazonia. Accept liberation greetings from me today, Comrade John Akuro. Today is Friday, and this is January 7, 2022. And today we are coming on to part two of the analysis that I promised on the participation of Honorable Tibor Nagy, the former U.S. Undersecretary for African Affairs, on Comrade Chris Anu's platform. There are a lot of things that he said, and it is incumbent on us as a people to establish what lessons we should be able to draw from that outing. When I was talking yesterday, I pointed out that he outlined a key role that diasporans, not only in the United States of America, but across the world, that South Cameroonian diasporans role that they have to play. He also took time off to talk to us about the position of the United States of America, that's in terms of foreign policy, regarding the situation in the southern Cameroons, and drew our attention to the fact that foreign policy of every country is generally dynamic. And that dynamism is premised on the situation on the ground wherever these countries have to intervene. And of course, he reminded us of this very important fact that La République du Cameroon is a sovereign nation and continues to enjoy diplomatic ties not only with the United States of America, but with a lot of other countries around the world that we will need as we prosecute our liberation struggle, or as we continue on our determined march towards freedom. And then he also drew our attention to one other important thing: how the world perceives us. Now, today, we are going to be looking at other aspects that I didn't evoke yesterday, but we shall come back to this once in a while. And some of those other aspects that were not evoked yesterday was what he said about international mediation, about the Swiss process, was also what he said about the leadership structure of the Southern Cameroons, and also was what he pointed out to be the failure of our diasporan groups in, penetrating some of those fears in the international scene that we need to penetrate to be able to make sense. And again, there was this question that came to the fore. Viewing what happened in the United Nations in 1961 and the current situation today, is the world so oblivious to the fact that the Southern Cameroons was truly an independent country and doesn't need to be forced onto La République du Cameroun, or conversely, La République du Cameroun doesn't need to force itself onto us? These are the measured trusts of what we are going to be discussing today. And so to do that, I have with me here in this studio two gentle ladies. These ladies are people who have proven their worth wherever they have been and in their various spheres of competence. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you, let's begin with Professor Lilian Achanga. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome all the way from Florida.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jomba Akuro. It is my pleasure to be on your platform and share thoughts on the issues relating to our very dear Southern Cameroon's struggle.
Thank you very much, Professor Lum. We will also now welcome our own very Dr. Maggie Kilo. I guess she's already a household name within the spheres of the Southern Cameroons, or within the sphere of our liberation movement. Hello, Dr.
It's
Maggie
indeed a
Kilo.
pleasure.
Greetings.
Yeah. Greetings to you, John. It's indeed a pleasure to be with you this Friday afternoon.
You are coming in from Dallas, am I correct?
Houston, actually.
Oh, Houston. in the great state of Texas. Awesome. So, you now know what I know. I have with me here, therefore, in the studio, to my right, I have Professor Lilian Lem, and to my left, I have Yamagi Kilo, and of course, I'm John Akuro, that traditional sovereign, well clad, as you can see for yourself. So we set the ball rolling today by, looking first of all, generally, Yamagi Kilo, what was your general overview of this outing by Honorable Tibor Nagy on the situation in the southern Cameroons?
You know, John, I think he was brutally honest to our people. If only they would listen to what he's saying. The key takeaways are that we cannot continue to do things the way we are doing and expect a different result. We must get together and be able to speak with one voice. We must know the qualities that we want in our leadership, and we select our leaders based on those qualities, based on deliverables. So we need to be a little bit more professional as we go forward with the struggle.
Uh, I mean, that is a very or rather interesting perspective you're opening there. What particularly caught your attention in in that 42-minute conversation on the Southern Cameroons by Tibor Nagy?
You know, he kept saying we are not together. He kept saying we are not united, we are dispersed. And this is something that really does plague our struggle because we really are not united. I mean, I take a country like Liberia, and I've spoken to all the people who uh, actually prepared for the negotiations of the end of the Liberian War. And one thing that they tell us all the time is that we've got to come together. We've got to come together. So the coming together is the most important thing. Right now, we have too many splinter groups and everybody sees themselves as the president, etc., etc. But we got to know what qualities we want in our leadership and be able to select our leaders based on those qualities so that we expect our leaders to be able to deliver for us. We don't want people who will be the masters and then people are serving them, just like Bia has been. Because if you take Paul Bia, all he does is he makes one speech, he goes back to Intercontinental, and that's his life. He doesn't do anything for the people of Cameroon. We cannot have that kind of a leader. We need a leader who rolls their sleeves up and does good work for our people, who is a real servant of the people.
Now, Professor Lem, when you listened to Honorable Tibor Nagy, did you have that feeling at some point that he was saying that we are really doing nothing completely? Because I read some people try to express that kind of feeling. What was your overall takeaway?
Mr. Jumba Akuro, thank you once more. And I think the interview with Tibor Nagy is one of the most insightful interviews, brutally honest, that we have had so far. And there was something he said that he will be practical and realistic. I underlined those two words because he was telling us things that no one will tell us. And he could tell us that now because he's no longer in an official position. So the things that he raised bordered around one, leadership, two, the world's knowledge of our conflict, three, our classification as a problem in the world, and to him, all of these were absent. We don't have leadership, we are not known, and therefore we are not a priority. We are not communicating the conflict enough. And I listened to other diplomats who spoke in other contexts that said, speak more amongst yourselves than to us. Because if we don't speak more with ourselves, understand ourselves, have a common strategy, we will be incapable of getting others to listen to us because we are producing noise, cacophony, too many voices saying too many things and they don't get a takeaway from us. So it requires for us to have a common voice. Even if we are splintered, as they say, we are splintered, we need a common voice, a common goal to speak and speak more of the problems in southern Cameroon because we are not known. He used the word publicity over 4 times. He used the word diplomacy several times. He did indicate that his office never knew us, which therefore means we've been making noise.
Yeah, this seems kind of deep. But when I look on the other side, I see apologists of the one Cameroon give the impression that after the passage of Tibor Nagy on the set with Comrade Chris Ano, that it was getting clearer that Ambazonia is unrealistic. Did you come away with that kind of perspective?
There is a possibility of that reading, but he said something. He used the word justified. He understands that our course is justified. And he gave an example how he went to Bamenda to investigate human rights abuses. And the governor was French speaking, the commanders were French speaking, everybody around him was French speaking. And he didn't understand how a country can be run like that. He did also note that in Canada, for you to be a public administrator, you have to be able to communicate in both French and English, which is not the situation in Cameroon. In that scope, he is justifying that he is indicating that we have a just cause. He is noting that we are marginalized and discriminated upon. But he was, however, firm on the fact that we need to communicate these issues rather than make noise around them. So it is how we communicate the struggle that is more important rather than what apologists say. The apologists can say anything they want to say, they have a right to say what they want to say. But what are we saying? How are we convincing the world about the problems and our needs as a people of the Southern Cameroons?
Now, I have also this particular view, this view of this whole situation. Look at this. I think when I listen carefully to Honorable Tibor Nagy, he states that as a people, the people of the Southern Cameroons have a fabulous case. That we have a very clear case that speaks for itself. He has that firm conviction that the people of the Southern Cameroons deserve to have their state. But how are we getting there? How do we get there? Do we as a people convince the rest of the world with the situation on the ground that we deserve to be seen as a stakeholder and not merely as a stake? When I go back to what he said, when he said diasporan actors need to have or need to exhibit a kind of mastery of how the foreign policy of every country, especially the United States of America, is shaped. Perhaps he puts there to question the role of our diaspora in prosecuting this liberation movement. Yamagikilo, I'm turning my attention to you. I want to find out, do you have the feeling that the diaspora, in the case of the Southern Cameroons, is lagging a lot? Do we have the capacity to live up to the expectations following what Honorable Tibonagi is saying?
What actually he is saying is that we can come together and lobby the lawmakers in the countries where we live in the diaspora. And if we do not lobby our lawmakers, if we don't bring to their attention, then we are letting the opportunities by. So basically, where we live, whether it's in America, in Canada, in Europe, uh, we need to come together and advocate more by actually lobbying our lawmakers, writing to them, getting them to understand our situation. And that's why I talk about being more professional when we go about uh, our cause. So when we talk to people, we go out there, we are prepared and we send letters, we meet with them, we talk to them. So we have to lobby them because there are so many other conflicts, so many other issues that draw their attention that we must be really prepared to communicate to them what our problems are. And we can only do that if we come together, and we prepare and we go out there and petition them and lobby them and get their attention. Because, most of us who live in the diaspora are citizens of the countries in which we live. So we vote, and that vote carries a lot. The lawmakers respect our vote. So we can use that vote to draw attention to the issues and get their sympathy and get their governments to act on our behalf. So if their governments can become our champions, like they've been for other countries, South Sudan, Eritrea, all these other countries, they've come out as champions for those countries and led them to the place where they have their independence today. It can happen to us as well, but we must come together, we must strategize together. And I know that our people have all the human resources, all the knowledge that it takes. So it's just a matter of coming together, strategizing, and acting.
Sometimes the question comes to mind: is it that we simply refuse to recognize the fact that there are things we should do that we are not doing, or that our current way of doing things is not yielding the desired results? Or is it simply that perhaps because we are locked in, to our egos, where we already imagine that we have a country, so we are government, or we need to start, fighting more for positions and focusing more, perhaps, on the need to preserve those positions than still looking at the elephant that is still way in the forest? I don't know, because when I look at the way a good lot of those who are in leadership address this situation, I get really, really, I should say, frustrated, because shortly after Honorable Tibor Nagi's outing, I overheard some of, our our comrades, or even read what some wrote, rather than address the issues or try to draw the lessons from what Honorable Tibor Nagy said. I rather saw a lot of write-ups of us bashing him, wondering why he closed himself in his office with ironclad security left and right and a bureaucratic machinery to bar us from coming. I'm not trying to wonder, is there a way we could have done to overcome this? Because it is an established situation. But Professor Lillian Lem, I'm coming to you. Is there an established possibility generally that we could overcome these barriers? Because others before us have been able to overcome these barriers and, score the goals. What is your perspective on this?
Yes, before I go to your last question, which is overcoming the barriers, I want to say that we were watching someone dissect our issues like Tibon Nagy did. He said we are not, and I repeat again, communicating enough. He said We need to work more with delegations to the Congress. We need to write a lot more in newspapers and TV stations. He said we need to highlight the different abuses, human rights abuses, do a lot more political mobilization, which therefore means that we have been doing what in politics is called echo chambers. Echo chambers are like you're in a room and you're shouting to yourself, and only you hear yourself. People don't hear you. So we need to get out of these echo chambers, away from insulting each other, to listening to what is wrong with us not moving forward and working on this. And I want to take the opportunity, CDN permitting me, to say that CDN is one of those organizations that has started addressing some of the issues that Tibor Nagy raised. We've, our conflict is not unique. In the Bougainville, there were also several splinter groups. They overcame it by having what they call the Unity Conference, to have a leadership elected during this leadership conference that would serve as the spokes people for the
or
struggle.
as a mouthpiece.
As a mouthpiece for the struggle, yes. In South Sudan, there were also splinter armed factions, just like we have. And they also came together as leaders of these forward armed factions to also speak as the leadership of the struggle. The key criticism of our struggle is that we are disunited. There are so many splinter groups. We quarrel with each other. I want to see that as a strength for now if we make use of it by coming together and speaking for a common purpose, which we all know. And the CDN in Toronto gave us that opportunity, that platform to come and speak with each other. People say, oh, there is this new organization and that one and that one and that one. I think if we come together on a common platform and say, okay, this is our core objective, this is the action plan, and we speak on A, B, C, D, and we agree on that, and we move forward as the CDN is proposing, then that works. One other thing that Tibor Nagy critiqued as a problem to the struggle is that our diplomatic engagements are not robust enough. And he did mention the United Kingdom as a potential diplomatic partner. A lot of the groups don't do this engagement and believe that we could return to 1961 and have our independence. I know this is another thing that is debatable, but I think that each of those groups, we can have that diplomatic offensive. And I would say that's been one of the strong points of the CDN, carrying out that diplomatic offensive. We need to talk to these governments. We need to make them our friends. Because when we eventually become a state, as we hope to be, we will still need these diplomatic engagements. In the world politics of today, no country remains alone. Even Afghanistan, that has tried to remain alone, is still struggling. So I think that we need to develop robust diplomatic strategies. Thank you.
Yeah, Magikilo, I want to ask you this. You listened to Honorable Tibor Nagy, and he said some very important thing. And I retained that when he referred to the U.S. Foreign policy position on the Southern Cameroons, he made use a lot of the past tense. Because I recall, he said at the time when he was, in function, he said, that the policy, the foreign policy, or the current policy of the United States of America was to see, Cameroon as a unit. But when I listened to him on this program, he referred to this a lot. He spoke a lot in the past tense. He said the foreign policy was. And then he said, when I met this, I urged. And today the United States supported. And then when you move from that to the content of Resolution 684, would you say the foreign policy of the United States on the situation in the southern Cameroons has remained static?
As a sovereign government, the policy of a government changes with the time, changes with situation, and changes with the realities on the ground. I can say, as a southern Cameroonian, that La République du Cameroon has made a lot of mistakes also. So we cannot say that they too are as united as we think, because the people who have been communicating with them from the very beginning of this conflict has actually expressed to them that this is not a conflict that they can win militarily, but they've preferred to follow the military option to the point where they have actually committed a lot of human rights abuses. And it is on those bases, and based on the fact that whatever they are doing to our people right now, they cannot fix. The war trauma that they are causing our people today, La République du Cameroon cannot fix. So we can even just take the humanitarian ground and say, look at how much these people are doing to us. Our children are not going to school, which means that we have a generation of illiterates being groomed. you know we have war on our people for demonstrating peacefully, which means that there's a lot of war trauma, and war trauma is very difficult to take care of. So the truth and reconciliation that has to happen cannot happen if we remain a part of La République, because we will continue to be treated in that relationship as second class citizens. They continue to post people to our part of the country, to our country, that don't speak English. And everybody really sympathizes with us when they see just how much we are losing because of a war that is not really necessary. So when you look at the situation, you have to say, yes, we have a lot going for us, but we must, in coming together, strategize how we approach the people who can be our champions to help us reach the independence that we are looking for. We have more work to do in reconstruction than we have to do in getting independence. So if we can just put our heads together and get the independence, the bulk of the work is really there on the reconstruction side. And we haven't even gotten there yet. People just don't realize what it is that we need to do.
Yes. When I like to go back to Honorable Tibor Nagy, because he said something which indicates that even the entire world, even the rest of the world believes that there will be a tipping point. And this tipping point will be where the world will say, well, the people of the southern Cameroons have exhausted every opportunity to want to have things fixed with La République du Cameroon, and that this country has just continued playing games upon games upon games upon games, and so it simply makes sense that the people of the southern Cameroons go their separate way, go into Ambazonia, because that is how the general referred to it, go into Ambazonia for there to be, lasting peace in the sub-region, in the Gulf of Guinea. And when I look back, I ask myself, what tipping point is the world still expecting here? Because first, all the way from 1961 to present date, the people of the southern Cameroons have been giving and giving and giving. First, La République du Cameroon violated the the terms, be them gentlemanly, of the kind of agreement that brought the southern Cameroons into a union with La République du Cameroon, where each part had to give up the name that they had at independence. And this is a very important act, because at independence we had La République du Cameroon. At independence we had the Southern Cameroons. And now when they were coming together to form the Federal Republic of Cameroon, the Southern Cameroons accepted to become known as West Cameroon. La République du Cameroon accepted to become known as East Cameroon. And the two formed the Federal Republic of Cameroon, made up of the states of West Cameroon and the state of East Cameroon. By 1972, La République du Cameroon decided to destroy this bond, to destroy this gentlemanly agreement, which was even enshrined in Article 47 sub A of the Federal Constitution, which said the federal form of the state was inviolate. 1972, they decided to organize some kind of quasi referendum, which, to many international experts, even comes across as illegal, comes across as unacceptable, where they decide to change the form of the state and take us to a kind of unitary state, but maintained a name called the United Republic of Cameroon, which still gave that impression that, okay, these were two entities that came together. But in 1984, Mr. Paul Biya, all alone with his pen, decides to change the name of the country back now from United Republic of Cameroon to Republic of Cameroon. And take note, at that point, Fongoji Dinka and a group of others raised the argument that La République du Cameroun has effectively seceded from the Union because they have gone back to La République, that the Republic of Cameroon that existed in 1961. But at this point, the southern Cameroons that joined as West Cameroon, that stayed in under a United Republic of Cameroon, suddenly gets missing. And from this point, there have been a lot of efforts to get La République du Cameroon to fix things. We can mention, a lot of meetings going from the tripartite conference to the AAC1, AAC2, the formation of the SCNC, and with the SCNC at the AAC2 saying La République du Cameroon was going to be given a reasonable time frame to resolve the thieving issue and take us back to 1961, failing which the people of the southern Cameroons would therefore be free to assert their sovereignty. Now, I'd like any one of you to take a speech. Do you think that after all the sacrifices from the side of the southern Cameroons, with La République du Cameroon giving nothing and ever struggling continually to erode, is it possible to say that we have not attained that kind of tipping point long ago that Honorable Tibor Nagy is talking about, where the world should stand and say La République du Cameroon has demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that they are not a good sparring partner? Who goes first?
Yes. Let me say this though. Historically, you can talk about a tipping point, but there are some things that must go with that tipping point that actually helps us uh, legislate and present our story to the world. And that is that capability of managing a country. You see, what we've been doing so far, I think the tipping point has been passed a long time ago. So it's not our inability to reach, to be patient enough to bear a lot of the hardships that La République has actually thrown our way. What we need to be able to do is to demonstrate to the rest of the world that we are mature enough as a people to manage our economy, to manage our diplomacy, to manage our territory, to manage our destiny, and to actually manage a country. We haven't been able to demonstrate that. By being as diverse and splintered as we are actually showing the world that we cannot come together. So, what we need, I take what my sister, Professor Lillian, is talking about. We need more Torontos to bring us together to the point where we actually see that we can come out as professional people, that we can think strategically about our population, about leadership, about economy, about human resources, about the reconstruction, to show the world that, like Somalia, for instance, we can manage a country. We need to be able to do that, and uh, we are actually quarreling over things that are not important and leaving the most important things without even looking at them. We need to say, what kind of a country do we want out of this? The mess that Buhari has actually done, and be able to say, how do we take care of all the things that have been destroyed? That destruction, there is a long history of it, but if we only sit and we say, oh, I am better than you, we do the little, we are more concerned about the little things instead of the most important things. We haven't even gotten there yet. As the British say, you don't count your eggs before they are hatched. You have to have a country first, show that you can manage a country, and then it will be given to you. Nobody's going to give you a country now when you're still, you are not managing what you have. So I think that we've got it all wrong. We can come together and actually strategize on the path to the country and what we make of this country.
Professor
We
Lillian
have
Lem, your
all the tools.
perspective?
Yes, yes. To complement, yeah, we had passed that tipping point, but it's not enough to pass that tipping point. In reading about South Sudan, there were certain preconditions that were necessary for they to reach that level. These conditions included availability of resources, which we have in abundance, just like South Sudan. There has to be extreme or acute suffering of the people, which in which we are already. Our humanitarian crises are really bad. There has to be the willingness of the country from which we want to break away from to negotiate. That currently is a barrier because, as Tibor Nagy himself indicated, the government of Cameroon is not willing to negotiate, at least not yet. But most importantly, as he had just mentioned, is a government to negotiate with, a ready, prepared, adequate, up to date government. And does the Southern Cameroons, can the Southern Cameroons boast of such a government? I know some people are going to say yes, but that is that perspective which is narrow. Because the outsider, like Tibor Nagy, has seen the fragmentation, the absence of a representative leadership. And that has been a complaint by many people, and we continue to deny that complaint. So, like Yas says, we need several Torontos to get to that level where we have that ready government that could be negotiated with for us to get what we want. Like I said earlier, South Sudan was fragmented and eventually got to that unity. Bougainville was fragmented, eventually got to that unity. And until we get there, the discourse of no people to negotiate with will continue. And I also continue to say that the different groups we have are not a barrier to that leadership. We just need to work towards that leadership through several Torontos by engaging to talk with each other, agree with each other on our way forward. As long as everybody continues to use the I, we will not work. We need to work together as a people. So we need to give opportunities to institutions and organizations that want to group us together to have that required leadership. We will not move forward. And Tibor Nagy is telling us that we only need to open our ears to listen to criticism, which is constructive rather than critique these people who are telling us the truth. We need to accept that truth rather than fight against it.
Thank you, Professor Lilian Lem. Um, just take a look at this. Freedom is one of the deepest and noblest aspirations of the human spirit. This is Ronald Reagan. Why am I bringing this here? Because in the body politic of the people of the southern Cameroons, sometimes we tend to misunderstand what we really are involved in. Some people believe perhaps at some point they were looking for regime change. That's why, in the cacophony that we're witnessing today, at one point you get people go to some diplomatic offices or to the offices of some the big people in the world, and they say, "Oh, Mr. Paul Biya and his government, they are marginalizing us. They are making life so complicated for us," and things like that. When they go out, the next group comes in and say, "No, we really want our right. They're just treating us as, subhumans. They are making us not really feel like, yes, everything is francophone, francophone, francophone." It gives sometimes the perspective, or rather the view, that this is a language problem, and that's why we have seen in some international media outlets, they will refer to the situation in the southern Cameroon as, a language conflict. And then at yet another point, the same people will give a completely different perspective, or some giving the impression that if there is regime change, perhaps things can be. But we really have to be consistent in our messaging. We have to be clear what we want. Because when we get really clear what we want, the rest of the world would definitely understand how to go along with us. But if one group comes, says one thing, the next group comes, says another thing, or even if we're all talking about ensuring total freedom for the people of the southern Cameroons, we need to be able to appreciate how to use this freedom. Is it the freedom for each one to embrace their own completely separate perspectives that ends up portraying us as, a confused set of people? This is something that we need to look at with, should I say, with an eagle's eye, to see how to depart from this, to make the world know that the situation or the conflict between the southern Cameroons and la République du Cameroon is one of territory, is one of sovereignty, is one of a stolen country. Because I've demonstrated here beyond reasonable doubt that this conflict is one of a stolen country. Because we see West Cameroon and East Cameroon inside the Federal Republic of Cameroon. Federal Republic of Cameroon thins off, becomes United Republic of Cameroon, which
Okay.
eventually disappears back into the Republic of Cameroon that once existed. This is something that is very clear and does speak for itself. So I like us perhaps to, you know, re-establish, to restate how we believe we can be able to shape and reshape the way the world looks at the situation in the southern Cameroons, or how the world appreciates the southern Cameroons question. Professor Lilian Lem, I'll come back to you first.
Yes. When I listen to the different political leaders of the Southern Cameroons, be it the IG or the IGK, be it AGOVC, be it the consortium or whichever one, the message is the same. Their vision is the same. Their destination is the same. So the problem is really not the messaging, but how we do this messaging. Are we working as a team or as separate entities? I believe that if our voice were one, if we had one platform with the same message going out, for example, it will have more power than different voices sending out these different messages. Tibor Nagy did say something. How many times does our struggle come up on the world media, on the different newspapers? How many congressmen in the UK, in the USA, in Canada, in Switzerland talk about this? Do we have spokespeople that are delegated to speak on these issues to the world? Or does anybody go out and speak and even insult those who even want to speak for us? What do we want as a people? If we continue to come in several streams rather than that large river or that ocean that floods the world with the issues that we are facing, I don't think we are going to make it. One of the things is we tend to focus on criticizing each other rather than advancing our cause. Can we stop the negative language of saying A did this and B did this rather than this is our problem as Southern Cameroonians? One thing, and I go back to the CDN, they don't come out to speak except they are speaking to advance that cause of the Southern Cameroons. The fact that I am unhappy with you does not mean I should tell the world I'm unhappy with you. I should rather tell the world that what you and I are doing to solve our problem. When they shoot and kill people in Cameroon, we all get hurt. We all get pained. So why do we focus on the negatives rather than on the positives? Why don't we talk together? And if we have a clearing house of information before it goes out to the world and reduce the many negative platforms that we have, which we use to come and insult people, we will be advancing our cause. We have very well trained Southern Cameroonians. Why don't we focus on those newspaper articles, the op-eds, the diplomatic engagements, going to our local Congress people and talking about that? We all are guilty because we all have access to our Congress people in the diaspora. And we don't need a group. Even one letter can start. It starts with one and then the ocean floods it. So we need to work in concerted efforts, coming together to have several more Torontos. And when they invite you, don't say that, oh, because it's CDN, because it's this one, because it's that one, I will not attend. No. When we come together, we have more power. And we demonstrated that in Toronto. Remember, post Toronto, we had Switzerland, United Kingdom, United States, and Canada issue a joint statement to the problems of the Southern Cameroons because they found that we have started speaking with one voice. Let us stop criticizing each other and working together as a team. Let us increase our diplomatic outreach. That
Now,
was the core message I got from Tibor Nagy.
now, Yamagi Kilo, I want to look at things perhaps differently. Is there the possibility that we will be able to do these things only by ourselves without perhaps going back to an experiment that worked before? Because I am recalling that there was a time when we had the Foley and Hawk law firm that operated as our lobby group, and they were able to help us overcome one challenge that Comrade Bo Herbert raised in his op-ed reacting to Honorable Tibor Nagy's outing. That he said, Honorable Tibor Nagy, when he was in function, he barricaded himself with, an administrative and security operative and made it impossible or say so difficult, complicated for us to attain him. But I guess that even our opponents also face these same barriers. Even if they are states, sometimes they will face these barriers, but they go through because we were the pioneers in the struggle. We were the first to get a lobby firm. And after that, La République du Cameroon today has about 5 or 6 in the United States alone. Is it possible for us to go back to that experiment? Or we think that we can continue to count just on ourselves and that on our own we'll be able to access the high offices in the world that we need to get to stratify and strengthen our diplomatic push.
You know, my brother John, let me say this to you that we have been acting like crabs in a bucket. you know, and the crabs in the bucket, they're just busy pulling each other down, and nobody ever really gets out of the bucket. Our problems are very, very simple. Once we diagnose our problems, because we've come together and we say, this is what we want for ourselves, this is how we can get there, all we need to do is to follow that path and stick to it, and we'll get there. Now, our people don't realize something. If you take a country, no matter how small, our population, we will still need to manage it with the same resources that you use to manage a big country. In other words, there is room for all of us, sons and daughters of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. There is room for all of us in that country to have space within which to work and within which to build. But we really still behave like crabs in the bucket. We should come out of our quagmire, come together, plot the path to our success, and stay on that path and get there. Because me, I see the journey to our independence much shorter than the work of reconstruction that we have to do when we get to Boya. So we are focusing really on the wrong thing. Everybody thinks that by being the big crab in the bucket here, when they get to Boya, they will be the ones to run the country. We will all of us be needed to run that country. Nobody's going to be left behind. So we want to get there now rather than delay our getting there, because it's not helping our children. Look at the people who are not able to go to school. Look at all the things the infrastructure that we cannot rebuild. Everything that we have to get an economy going, we cannot do because we are looking at each other. Oh, I'm going to be president. Oh, I'm going to be this. Oh, I'm going to be that. We are stuck here instead of getting to the place and begin to fix it. We are staying. It's like the Jews, they left Egypt to get to Israel, and it took them 40 years because they're squabbling and squabbling along the way. So a journey that could have taken them a very short period. And we have the skills to do this. We don't need to be roaming around in the desert and getting lost. We just need to come together, and we have the skills, we have the brains to show that path to where we want to go. We get there because the bulk of the work is down there, it's not here in the bucket.
Okay, we shall come back especially on this to talk about the way forward. As I mean, everyone is involved in looking right now, especially with what we see happening in one of the IG factions. It's clear that I mean the cacophony is getting louder, and so we must be thinking seriously on how to restore some order back or rather to restore some order in the struggle. But let's get out of that to another very important thing that Honorable Tibor Nagy talked about, which was international mediation, and specifically the Swiss process. Of course, both of you listened to what he said about the Swiss process, referring to it as seeming coming across like a process just to have a process, because 3 years down the line, I mean, there's absolutely no evolution. Yamagikilo, I recall that while we were in Toronto, I mean, you actually spoke a lot about this to the representative of the Swiss Federal Ministry. What is your perspective with respect to the angle taken on this issue by Honorable Tibor Nagy?
I think he basically is agreeing with me that the Swiss process is just a process. It basically was designed to keep us busy while La République one defeated us militarily. It was never a process to get to peace, and that's why you heard our brother Chris Anu saying, "Bring La République to the negotiating table." There is no table. It's just a process. So we need to be able to have a multilateral process that actually brings champions for our independence around that negotiating table. It's not us to do it by ourselves. And we might not, if we play our cards right, we might not even need to go to the negotiating table. You know, if we get good champions, if we get a good program, if we allow La Republique to continue making the mistakes, we might find ourselves in a position where we are declared a country without even negotiating anything.
Are
It
you
is
saying we may
possible.
just? Are you saying it's possible we just sleep seriously and then we get up one morning and find ourselves in Ambazonia?
I am saying that we need to come together, plot how we want to get there, and get there. There is work to be done, but our people don't realize that there is work to be done. We might get there, we could get there without even negotiating with La Republique.
Perhaps what you are
Remember,
saying, yeah,
mhm,
perhaps what you are saying is that we may only have to find ourselves around a table with La République du Cameroon to discuss the terms of separation.
absolutely. It will be what you call assets bifurcation. It will be what you call the dividing of the assets that we have. And that is not negotiation. That is something totally different now. So, if we play our cards right, like, you remember I said in Toronto, we come down from our high horses because we can get stuck here where we are only looking at, oh, I want to be this, I'm more important than you, and we want to do this, and I can do that. And we never really get to where we want to go. And like I said, the more work is where we want to go than where we are today. The lobbying, the reaching out to people, the advocacy is much easier. The work that is waiting for us is the reconstruction work, the peace building and state building work that we have to do when we get there. But we are not coming together, you know
Yeah,
and we need to ask each other, what can I give, what am I willing to give in order to get up to the place where our people should be. That is the question that we should be asking ourselves. What am I willing to give up so our people, 8 million people, can get opportunity, can get promise, can get peace? And once you can do that, then we will begin to find a way out. And honestly, I see that there is a way out.
yeah, Professor Lillian Lem, perhaps it takes us to the very reason of the existence of the CDN because I hear people ask, why is it called Committee on Negotiation and Dialogue? Negotiating with who? Perhaps it takes us to what Professor Dr. Yamagi Kilo says there, that this this work of reconstruction that she's talking about, some may be looking at it mainly as being reconstruction after we get La République du Cameroon out of our territory. But I think this major reconstruction is what we need to do now by putting our minds and heads together and understanding that our strongest point lies in the synergy that we must build, in our strength to be able to overcome this challenge. I don't know if you I mean if you share in her view.
I totally share in largely with the views of Yamagi. And I still go back to Tibor Nagy. When I listen to him, he says that the Swiss process was there just for there to be a process. I may not be quoting him right, but that's what I understood. He also indicated that there is not enough pressure to assist the Swiss to get the government of Cameroon to come to table, which means that the Swiss are incompetent, perhaps incapable of bringing La République to the negotiating table. And I saw the frustration of Chris and when this came up. And I think that it's something that we need to take seriously. In Toronto, the Southern Cameroonians largely critiqued the Swiss to their face of their incapacity for over a year to bring the
For over two
La
years.
République. for over 2 years to bring La République to table. He says we require dramatic happenings. Those were his words. We require massive diplomatic outreach. When I listen to him, I then understand that it is not about the Swiss. It's about whoever who wants to be the mediator. If that body or government does not receive large international backing and pressure to pressure La République to come to the table, La République may continue playing the delay tactics and may never come to the table. Then, when they asked him about US diplomatic policies towards Cameroon, my understanding from what he says is it keeps changing. And when he uses the word dramatic, it therefore requires that we as Southern Cameroonians need to do something for there to be a dramatic engagement of the international community, either to support the Swiss to do what they have to do, or get other governments to work with the Swiss so that they can pressure the government of Cameroon to come to table. Meaning that if we remain where we are, and I want to quote some members of the IG who says the Swiss are enough, we already have a process, we will not get there. We are dreaming. We must do something to pressure the government of Cameroon to come to table. The Swiss are not doing enough or are incapable, so we need to do something that will pressure other governments to assist the Swiss to achieve this mission, or completely we get some other one. And when he says that, given that the Swiss are the process that is on the table, it therefore means that there is no other government which can come to the table as long as the Swiss are there. So the question we should be asking is, do we need a Swiss plus? And by that, we mean, do we need to strengthen the Swiss process by having other governments come on board, not just government, perhaps other organizations come on board to work with the Swiss to bring to bear this pressure so that we can move forward. So if we sit and we are dreaming that they will do something, it may not happen. That was an assessment from Tibor Nagy that we need to listen to and act on if we want to move this struggle forward. Thank you.
You will note that early on, when the Swiss just came in, the consortium that I belong to raised a lot of the issues that Honorable Tibor Nagy raised on Cristiano's platform. We were concerned that we were getting engaged in a process which will look more like just for the sake of having a process in place. We were concerned that the bases that were put in place were definitely not enough. I'm not surprised that even Honorable Tibor Nagy today and others before him, we've listened to some officials from Germany talk, we've listened to some officials from the UK talk, we've listened to other international experts who have also cast a pall on this Swiss process, because the premise from which the Swiss came in, and we need to be very honest about this, was that they were coming to facilitate, and they said in Toronto that they were facilitators, that they were coming to facilitate dialogue between the government of Cameroon and its opposition, because that is how their communique was couched, that they were coming to facilitate dialogue between Cameroon and its opposition. I think the Swiss at that time did not get the entire perspective of the fact that they were getting here in a situation that is international in nature and involves two international entities with clearly recognized international borders. And so if they came from the perspective that they were coming to talk to a government and its opposition, then they got it all wrong from the point go. And that is why we are where we are now. That's why we are having all the feet dragging that we are having today. And that is why at that point too, we noted, just like Honorable Tibor Nagy said, that the Swiss may likely end up like, some kind of obstacle at the door, like standing at the door, and the entire world has the feeling that there's a process in place when there is no process. And just the fact that they're at the door It bars the way for any international actor to come on board. And so that is why I recall in Toronto, a lot of us were of the opinion that we either get other actors to beef up this and make it a veritable process, or the Swiss should get off from the door so that we have something in place. And again, you also heard Honorable Tibor Nagy say, with the Swiss present, with that perspective, with that imagination that there is a process in place, the international community finds itself in a tight corner, bringing the heavy arm of sanctions on La République du Cameroon, of that international pressure that is required. Because each time you want to talk, they point to the Swiss process, but they are really not declaring for it. And that is why some say, oh, are you the mouthpiece of Cameroon to come and say that they are not buying in? No, it is in the interest of La République du Cameroon at this point to stay quiet. If they say we are not buying in, the world will say then there is no process. And now they have removed that obstacle by the door, which gives them time. If they say we are in, then we will now be expecting that, okay, come to the table. But what we need to bear in mind, as I know, I mean, from reading a lot of pieces about the situation in the southern Cameroons, and from reading a lot of publications by our own Professor Fonkem Achanken, talk about mutual hurting. If the two parties don't get to that tipping point of thorough mutual hurting, where we all become weary of hostilities, it will be difficult to start conceiving a situation where people think like, yes, we need to come to the table now, or we really have to kind of start talking. So this is where we are at this point. uh Yamagi Kilo, you came up with this view that perhaps uh the Swiss just need to give way. Do you still hold that same opinion?
Well, let me say this though. I was shocked to hear from the Swiss in Toronto that they had actually been invited by La République du Cameroun. I was really shocked to hear that, because here is a process that Swiss HD is managing and La République du Cameroun is not there. So the reason I asked the Swiss to give way, to allow others to come, and they said yes, they really agreed to that. They said, we are going to open it. In fact, what surprised me also was the fact that the act that was supposed to be working with the Swiss, did refuse to attend the meeting in Toronto. So the Swedes now are willing to have others join the process. So it becomes a multilateral process, like Resolution 684 has required. I think we should agree to that. But I think we should also come together and actually let the Swedes know how we want to change the process, because we have the capacity to change the process and make that process have deliverables, because you cannot go to negotiations and you don't have deliverables. We want to be able to say, by 6 months, here is where we need to be. By 1 year, this is where we need to be. And that's why I would always say that the big part of our job is to come together and work towards uh, the reconstruction of our country, rather than getting stuck in a place where we are in a process that is not getting anywhere. Because you would hear the act people say, oh no, they are the ones who are responsible for the Swiss process and they are the only ones who can negotiate on our behalf. But that's wrong. We all have to come together. We all have the capacity to look into the Swiss process, design it to deliver for us what we want, and to deliver quickly. We can stay in the Swiss process for the next 10 years if we want. But the faster we get that thing through, the faster we will get to the point where we are actually like Somalia and we are building our country.
You're talking like
You know,
Somaliland.
yeah, like Somaliland.
Somaliland.
Yeah, like Somaliland.
Um,
um, you,
if I may
yeah.
just comment following Yamagi, the Swiss describe themselves as facilitators. They didn't call themselves mediators, and I found that pretty interesting. And another thing is, whoever is a mediator or facilitator or whatever it is has to be accepted by the two parties. The other thing is, the diplomatic relations the government of Cameroon has kept with many other countries, especially the African countries, and we know that Cameroon is a founding member of the African Union, which in the past was the OAU. And experts from analysis think that very few African countries will be transparent and honest enough in such a mediation process, and therefore it's challenging to get that one African country that can be involved in that. The experts also believe that the route through the United Nations may not yield the kind of fruits we want or may not be as fast as we want. And that then leaves us the option of having other governments or organizations come in for such a mediation engagement to be successful. Now, for us to get to that point of having other governments to come and either strengthen the Swiss process or replace the Swiss process, it then now depends on our diplomatic relations with these governments and organizations. So the question I'm asking us Southern Cameroonians is, have they thought beyond the Swiss? Have they thought of these different possibilities and strategies? The CDN is thinking of it, but the other ones, are they thinking of it? And are they working together to make these friends that we direly desire to come and strengthen these processes? Or do we go back and bury our heads in the sand like the ostrich and say, we don't even need diplomacy, we don't need other governments to come and give us our independence? These are questions that we need to sit back as a people, reflect on, strategize on, rather than focus our attention on saying this organization is bad, that one is bad, this one is doing, that one is stealing, and so on and so forth. Rather than critique each other, let's think critically on these questions and have a roadmap as a people on which governments can be our friends. And the best way to do it is through lobbying these governments, maybe through our congressmen. There are several strategies, which Tibor Nagy did highlight some. So that is what I want to come in and say. And as the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations, which you earlier hinted on, are looking for these possibilities of dialogue, of negotiation, of conversations with different stakeholders. And we remember that in stakeholder strategies, you talk with everybody, your enemies and your friends. You keep your enemies closer to see how they think for you to engage them, and your friends to strengthen your capacity and the way to move forward. So we need to continually engage with our stakeholders rather than insult and critique them. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Professor Lillian Lim. Um, we have about 15 minutes to go on this panel. And in the next 15 minutes, I want us to be looking at the way forward. Let's try now to look more internally. Faced with the numerous calls, because I know even in Toronto there was the same call ringing. Besides that, even from ground zero is the same call ringing loud and loud in our ears. From all our partners is the same call ringing. We need synergy. We need to come together. But now, how do we come together? Looking at the situation the way it is among the various Southern Cameroon's stakeholder groups, we even have, more groups mushrooming out on a daily basis. How do we then build this kind of synergy? Some have proposed lately that perhaps we need a fifth conclave to reboot. Let me use the word reboot, it was used before. That is to kind of go back to the drawing board and put in place that body that would be like the Leviathan, that body that should federate, permit me use the word, that should federate the actions of the various groups, movements, and organizations so that we have perhaps representatives from all these movements finally in that group, which will come across like a council. Professor Lillian Lem, I know you came here while we had the Liberation Council, the Southern Cameroon's Liberation Council, away from couching out the Washington Collaborative Conference. We had thought of that, but before that, we had the Governing Council, and before it, we had SCACUF. And the Governing Council was an ideal body which gave us the possibility to have all our groups in, and the representatives from the various groups formed what was known as the Leadership Council, while the body itself, the governing council itself, had a little executive arm with three people running it. The president, that was called chairman, the vice chairman, and a secretary general. Perhaps we just need to think fast and go back to something that worked. I begin with you, Yamagi Kilo. How does this idea of a conclave bringing all the stakeholders together to kind of look at things afresh, how does it resonate with you? How does it sound? Does it resonate with you? That's the
Oh,
way I should have put it in the first
it
place. Yeah.
fits very, very well with me because, like you've heard over and over, Professor Lillian and I have talked about several Torontos. What happened the last time in October when we went to Toronto is that some people refused to show up. The invitation was extended to them and they said no, they wouldn't come. So this is not the last. You heard, you were there in Toronto, you heard that this is not the last meeting. We are going to have some more. And it just means that the coming together will be more and more until after several Torontos, we are able now to work on an action plan that takes us to uh, the to do the work that we've not done so far. And that's we have a lot of diplomacy work to do. We have a lot of advocacy work to do. And I see the CBN as, yes, an organization that could drive this, but they really need more hands on deck. And that's where we need to come together and assign tasks to different people when we draw our action plan. When we draw that roadmap, we give the people to do the work. And then we can come together and say, yes, this is where we are going. We measure, we are able to say, after 3 months, we want to be here. After 6 months, we want to accomplish this. That's how you get your results approach, and then you can say that you've actually accomplished something. But I keep repeating, our people are lost in the forest for the trees. They look at the trees and they don't realize that there is a much bigger forest there. So what we need to do is to make sure that we have a roadmap that takes us to freedom and independence. And after that, we need to be implementing a reconstruction program. We need to be making sure that our children are going to school, that they have good quality education, that we have a country where the private sector is thriving, because that's where the jobs are going to be. We have to be thinking about all of these things. We are still stuck. I don't know what, maybe Paul Biya gave us something in that La Republique. We are still stuck there fighting each other over, honestly, we we have so much work to do, and yet we are just turning around and around and around in the same place. So I see that and I get frustrated because, people imagine that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years we haven't budged. You know, we cannot sit like this. We need to come together and actually have a program, have a path, a peace plan that takes us to the place where we want to be, because we really have a lot of work to do, building the country for our children.
Professor Lilian Lem, yeah, Toronto already showed us that getting everyone together is really going to be an uphill task. What do you think we can do differently this time? If the idea of having a conclave thrives, like I'm already hearing being proposed here and there, may we have to do differently? That was not done by the CDN when they were getting people to Toronto to ensure that everyone comes on board this time.
I think the difference between Toronto and the previous conclaves was that Toronto didn't seek to get different groups lose their identities, but it sought to get different groups work in synergy to move forward. And to do that, the CDN engaged individuals and groups on a one-by-one basis, speaking to the different groups and individuals to sample their ideas and the way forward. One or two groups, especially the ACT, didn't join Toronto, and I am still hoping that they will come on board. But also, post Toronto, by my count, a minimum of two groups have emerged. But these two groups are not challenging Toronto. They have agendas that are parallel, not necessarily hurting the struggle, but adding a perspective to that struggle. So we should not go looking at, oh, because there's this group, it therefore means we are not moving forward. The question is, how do we move forward? And we continue to say that we continue to engage with each other, speak with each other, and as Yah proposes, have a roadmap that we build into this roadmap. I got up to reading about another group which calls itself the Coalition for Referendum, something like that. That's brilliant. Whatever they are doing, they are still seeking for a road to get to that destination which we all seek. It is not in having um, uh, all the groups come together under one leadership that will take us there. I do not believe we can succeed in getting that. I don't see people really, what's the word?
Relinquishing?
Giving,
Relinquishing.
Relinquish?
yes, sorry. Relinquishing their power
Some
to
of those
be
words
under
can blame your jaws,
somebody.
you know.
Yeah. We see groups have fought ferociously to stand alone, to be leaders. And people call themselves Secretary of State or Minister of this or whatever. People don't want to lose those powers. We are not asking them to lose it. We are asking them to use it to work together with us in synergy to forge forward by coming together so that we sit and talk and strategize. And I'm hoping that we continue to consolidate what we had in Toronto and build onto it and invite groups that were not in Toronto to come on board. You can approach the CDN, but if you don't, the CDN will be approaching you. And we have this conversation and have that strategy, that single voice that they are claiming we do not have, that single representation, which is not necessarily an individual. Like I said earlier in this show, Bougainville had what they call the Unity Conference, in which they had that leadership that would speak for Bougainville. South Sudan had their key armed leaders come together and create that body that spoke for South Sudan. So we can also have that without each group losing their identity or their power, but because we come on a single platform and discuss and move forward. And CDN is working on that, and we call on other people to come and strengthen. CDN does not have all the knowledge, but they need people to come and build this knowledge together and move forward. If we cannot do that now, how will we do it as a nation? Are we a failed state before we even become a state? Can we not work together as a people? Yeah, just said there's more than enough for everybody. We are going to be a very small state.
More
So
than
why
enough
are we
state, more than
fighting?
enough space
More than enough space.
on the elephants
So
for
let's
everybody to throw
start.
their punch.
Yes. So let's start working together now rather than wait for when we will become a state. There will be several oppositions in the state. So how do we deal with opposition?
Yamaki Kilo, perhaps being your last intervention before we wrap it up on this discussion, how do you think we can go about to get everyone buy into this notion that we really have to, build on what will be our biggest advantage, that is synergy. Because it seems like each time we come close to having that synergy, La République du Cameroon catches a cold. What do you think we need to do differently that the CDN didn't do to make sure that everyone really accepts to come on board?
We are probably too carried away with La République du Cameroon. I don't believe that La République is a very efficient country. It wouldn't be where it is. It's already a failed state on its own. It can hardly manage its own affairs. It's a kleptocracy.
Of course, you and I and Professor Lem were told in Toronto by the diplomats that came there that La République is even more divided than us. Just that we don't
Absolutely.
have to pride ourselves that okay, they are just as divided as us, and so let's stay divided. So we should
No,
capitalize on their division and then work on
no,
our bonding together so that we are strong enough to overcome them. Is that what you're saying?
no, I am saying we should not be preoccupied with them. They don't have anything to offer us. We should forget about La République. They are in their own mess and they need to take care of their own household. What we need to do is take care of our household. Focus on us getting what we want. And it is very easy for us to get what we want. That's what I'm saying. And everybody, every diplomat that you talk to, everybody who has gone through conflict that you talk to, they will tell us, come together. You need to come together. You need to come together. How much of that do we need to hear before we come together? So my view is that we must come together. We have the expertise, we have the know-how, we have people who know what to do, and we need to come together so we can actually plot that roadmap for peace and get to where we want to do. Because for me, the bulk of the work is what is waiting for us when in the reconstruction of our country. It's not even this roadmap to getting there. We need, we know how to get there. We just need to come together and get there. And when we do, we will be able to define all the different areas where people can show their expertise. All these secretaries of state and all these people, they will show us what they are made of when we get there. But for me, the issue is to get to our destination. It's the most important.
Yabagi, I really like to share your optimism because, I mean, the way you talk, if someone listens to you talk, they understand that this freedom is already a foregone conclusion. And so we should even already start thinking about of the reconstruction that lies ahead of us. So, Professor Lem, your final word on this program before we wrap it up.
When Tibor Nagy spoke, I had two takeaways. We must be united. We must have a representation, and we must ferociously engage in the diplomatic outreach. Failing which, we are not known, we don't have a conflict, no one is paying attention to us. We must seek that attention. So we must spend our time not insulting each other, but engaging our diplomatic friends so that we can have that outcome that we desire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Today I'll not say ladies and gentlemen because I'm so well clad. Thank you very much, yeah. And I mean, I guess it's a beautiful moment out there in Houston because where I am, it's been snow, snow, snow all day. And Professor Lim from the Sunshine State of Florida, I know it's also a very nice time out there. And I want to thank you, ladies. Thank you both for taking off time from your very busy schedules to be part of this program. And I wish, like other Southern Cameroonians and Ambazonians, that we shall have this opportunity to share again over and over until we are able to attain our objective, which is delivering a free Southern Cameroons to our people. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a very cute and nice moment on this program, sharing. But before I go, I'd like us to retain this. The life of the nation is secure only while the nation is honest, truthful, and virtuous. Listen, prior to the start of this program, Professor Lam told me, let's not always pick it from the negative end. Let's handle it from the positive end. I want to call on all and sundry that even as we are working hard, putting together ideas to see how to strengthen our movement, let us do it in all fairness, in all honesty. Let us do it with an open spirit, with a clear mind. Let us come with the view to complementing each other and to covering up for the weaknesses that we notice in one another. In that light, we will be able to attain our objective, which is that of offering the people of the Southern Cameroons the freedom they desire. I'd like us to also end up with this thought by Harry S. Truman, who says, America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, on imagination, and an unbeatable determination to do the job at hand. There are key words that are written here. The reference here is to America, but I want to remove America and put Ambazonia in some years to come. That they will say Ambazonia was not built on fear. Yes, because we are a very courageous set of people. That Ambazonia was built on courage. It is our courage and our imagination and our unbeatable determination to attain this freedom that has made our people, both on ground zero and in the diaspora, on ground one, ground two, ground three, to develop the kind of resilience that we have made proof of, or that we have shown proof of, or that we have demonstrated to the rest of the world during this period from 2016 to 2022. But 2022 should be the turning point, where we go from just showing resilience to presenting results. And our greatest strength lies in synergy. Reason we must be able to exploit what our greatest strength is. With that, my people, I want to thank you once more for setting time aside to share with us on this platform. Until we meet again on this platform, it's have a nice time.